Coming up on Network Africa, Kenya's Ministry of Interior defends deportation of opposition lawyer Miguna to Canada. And South Africa's ruling party, the ANC, holds fruitful and constructive talks with President Zuma. Plus, planned protest over rising fuel prices in Ghana criticized by industry regulator. Hello and welcome to the program. I am Bisi Adebayo. We begin in Kenya, where the Ministry of Interior has defended the decision of deporting opposition lawyer Miguna to Canada. The ministry says he was a Canadian national who had illegally obtained a Kenyan passport when he was an advisor to the then Prime Minister Raila Odinga. In a statement, the ministry says Mr. Miguna had deliberately failed to disclose that he had citizenship of another country when he was given a Kenyan passport in March 2009. Therefore, Mr. Miguna's Kenyan passport was and still remains illegal. Mr. Miguna was deported to Canada after taking part in Mr. Odinga's unofficial inauguration as the people's president at a ceremony last week. Mr. Odinga boycotted an election rerun last year, saying conditions for a free and fair poll did not exist. He has, however, called for a fresh election in August 2018. The Kenyan journalist Eric Uvala is here with us for more on this. Eric, thanks for joining us. What else can you tell us about Miguna's deportation to Canada?
Thank you for having me. Well, Miguna's story has taken a very unexpected turn last evening when the National Resistance Movement leader or self-declared general was deported from Kenya to Canada. So this was about 10 p.m. last night. And this latest twist has sparked an outrage among opposition supporters and Miguna's lawyers. So it is not clear what law the government used to eject Miguna from Kenya, but the Constitution guarantees Miguna's citizenship since he's a Kenyan by birth, not by registration or not by naturalization. So given that he was born in Kenya, it puts the government in a precarious position because they may be acting outside the Constitution to deport him.
But a spokesman for the Interior Ministry says that Mr. Miguna renounced his Kenyan citizenship years ago. And of course, Mr. Miguna has denied that allegation. But what does the Kenyan Constitution say about this? Is it possible to declare a Kenyan citizen a prohibited immigrant?
No, it is not possible to have a Kenyan citizen declared persona non grata. According to Article 16 of the Kenyan Constitution, the new constitution which was promulgated in the year 2010, a Kenyan by birth, even if holding a dual citizenship, can never lose his or her citizenship. And Article 17 also stipulates that a foreigner who has acquired citizenship can lose it. So Miguna not being a foreigner and him being born in Kenya, it shows that his citizenship by birth, should hold. That Miguna was born in Kenya, his deportation violates the Constitution.
Oh, but the Kenyan government says Miguna deliberately failed to disclose he had citizenship of another country when he was given a Kenyan passport in 2009. But is it unlawful to have dual citizenship in Kenya?
Well, dual citizenship is very legal in Kenya. Many expatriates, athletes, and ordinary Kenyans, exercise that right by having dual citizenship. However, the last couple of weeks have been very extraordinary in Kenya, politically speaking. For the first time in the country's history, we've had the swearing in of an opposition leader, while at the same time there's a legitimate president in office. Therefore, the government is taking extraordinary and many would argue illegal measures to signal zero tolerance to the opposition. So while in Amsterdam, en route to Canada, Miguna this morning said that he has never denounced his Kenyan citizenship and that he vowed to challenge his deportation through his lawyers and have the perpetrators face justice.
Now let's talk about the man Raila Odinga, who is calling for fresh elections in August 2018. What do you make of this new request from Odinga?
Well, I believe Mr. Odinga is being very strategic. Given he challenged the legitimacy of Uhuru Kenyatta's presidency, his calls for fresh election is understood by his opposition leaders. However, from the government side, I really do not think that this is something that they are going to acquiesce to, because already we have had two general elections or two presidential elections in the last few months. So having another election, I believe, is Mr. Odinga just trying to have or to make his calls for his presidency to appear like he has a legitimate question on Uhuru Kenyatta's government. So whether that will happen or not is something which time will tell. But the government has been cracking down on the opposition, and the debate has been raging whether Raila Odinga is going to be arrested by the government. It's something which is being weighed by the government security agencies.
Now, but what do you think would happen if Mr. Odinga's request for another election in August doesn't happen?
Well, I think that is a request which the government has repeatedly said that it is not going to acquiesce to. I believe that, the opposition is sticking to its guns, and we may have a fresh round of protests in the city or even across the country. Remember, the opposition got about 6 million to 7 million votes in the last election. So they have quite a large amount of support in the country. So we may be looking at another standoff, and protests or street clashes between police and protesters is something which is very likely to happen.
Now, just before I let you go, Eric, do you think that Miguna's arrest and deportation is another way of silencing the opposition?
Yes, I believe that this deportation is a straight message to the opposition. You see, the government has in the past few weeks signaled zero tolerance to dissent, and they may use any opportunity, that avails itself to send a very clear message to the opposition that dissent is not going to be taken lightly. So, given, I think, about 3 leaders now of the opposition have been arrested, and one of them was arraigned in court today, this is something which the government is using just to squeeze the opposition and to push them in a corner, just to show them that they're not going to take dissent lightly. However, the opposition, is also being fired up with the government's latest action, and protests have been happening in four counties in Western Kenya, where Mr. Raila Odinga has the strongest support. So this crackdown on the opposition, of course, is fueling up the opposition's resolve to just continue marching until they change the political situation in the country.
Kenyan journalist Eric Avala, thanks for speaking with us.